Hello, my name is Joelle Jostin,
And I'm Joseph Park.
and we wanted to explore how cognitive theories are helpful for effective teaching and inclusive learning.
So in this presentation, we'll be looking at two different, very well-known psychologists named Piaget
And
and
Vygotsky!
Vygotsky.
Yay!
Yeah, and so who they are and how their theories can incorporate into effective teaching and inclusive learning. Jean Piaget lived from 1896 to 1980, was a Swiss psychologist. Piaget's theory focuses on cognitive development of cognitive abilities, primarily in young children. He focuses on how they mature and how their brains strive to make sense of the world from birth to young adulthood. Children's thinking process changes slowly but radically during these periods. Three important factors in his theory are maturation, activity, and social transmission. So Piaget's stages of cognitive development shows the children's characteristics based on approximate age. There are four stages: sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, and formal operational. Some course material that can be incorporated into creating effective teaching environment, along with insight into Piaget's theory, are the characteristics of master teacher. Knowing and understanding the young students of certain ages on personal levels and not just academical levels enables the educator to think and plan strategically to suit the individual needs. Referring to these stages and assessing what kind of mental development they should focus on, educators can monitor students of certain age groups that they teach to prepare themselves to respond accordingly. So the first stage is sensory motor. This is typically between age of 0 to 2. Students develop reflexes, senses, and movement. So the effective teaching method in this case will be the educators can focus on developing students' reflexes and senses in general by playing games that use reflexive and perhaps even reflexes and perhaps even allowing them to physically build shapes or draw things that they recognize. Educators can also encourage children to imitate movements or making sounds by physically demonstrating it to them first. The second stage is pre-operational. This is between age of typically 2 to 7. Students develop sense of language, start using symbols to represent objects. They are likely egocentric and struggle to view things in others' perspectives. They think in present, but have difficulty thinking in past or future. So the effective teaching method in this case will be educators can monitor closely the student's grasp of language and assist its development by constant input, since language development is the key to effective learning in all forms of communication between them and the educators, and as well as between them and the fellow classmates. When introducing new ideas or concepts, educators can also use visual aids and talk in second person pronoun to make the lesson centered around the students to ease the understanding. The third stage is concrete operational, typically between the age of 7 to 11. Students develop logical ways of solving hands-on problems, a sense of conservation and equilibrium, and structural thoughts. They become capable of undoing or unlearning mentally. So the effective teaching method in this case will be the educators should introduce the students the ways to plan and organize efficiently and manage time, energy, etc. They can provide guidance in the areas where students spontaneously develop interest. Educators can also teach students about actions and consequences in social settings, which is an important part of building adequate attitude as students, which is important part of building adequate attitude as students, as well as good relationships with their fellow classmates. So the last stage is formal operational. This is typically between age of early teen to young adulthood. Students can think hypothetically, deductively, and in scientific manner. They develop concerns of social issues, justice, and personal identity. So the effective teaching in this case will be, so the point to note here is that discovery of self-identity gives the students the general directions that they will take to pursue their passion. So the educators can determine the student's identity, but they can't determine the student's identity, but they can affect their development. So they should provide an environment that sparks various thoughts in students so they can freely explore what intrigues them. Educators can also introduce ways to navigate through information about current affairs in various forms and teach them how to view them from an objective perspective before developing opinions on political, socioeconomic, and other issues.
Yay, thank you, Joseph. So those are our thoughts on Piaget. Next, we're going to move to Vygotsky. So a little bit about him. Lev Vygotsky lived from 1896 to 1934 and was a Soviet psychologist. Vygotsky's theories consist of human activities taking place in cultural settings. People's specific mental structures and processes can be traced to their interactions with others. Social interactions create cognitive structures and thinking processes. And one thing I'm going to particularly focus on is the zone of proximal development, so we will get into that later. So for effective teaching. For Vygotsky, a half-baked idea is just as important as a fully developed answer. While these two examples are at different levels of understanding, both are on the same pathway of learning. Therefore, an effective teacher will not tell a student who has a half-baked idea to correct themselves. Instead, they will see potential and encourage the student's learning process. This connects to the Metaphors of Hope document that we read in class. It explains that, quote, thinking of learning as growth can draw our minds to the need for patience. Therefore, rather than correcting students, an effective teacher will support and encourage their growth. This is especially relevant when students are given opportunities to articulate their thoughts through writing and speech. During this process, Vygotsky explains that meaning can be derived from what is taught. An effective teacher can help students have a meaningful experience through discussion groups. Vygotsky argues that discussions are helpful, and he uses a phrase called the zone of proximal development. This is the space between a child's ability for independent problem solving and the potential for them to do so under adult guidance or peer collaboration. So for example, when I observed a first grade classroom, I saw that the students were learning how to articulate their thoughts into writing. So in one lesson, the teacher started by asking the students how she should write a given topic. She also asked them how to punctuate sentences and explained why she chose to write the way she did. And while she was modeling for them, she was also using Vygotsky's scaffolding technique, which connects with the zone of proximal development. She entered into this zone by making what she wrote a collaborative effort for the class. And then, when the students learned how to do it with her, she had them try to write a different prompt on their own independently. Therefore, an effective teacher will encourage student growth, and by being patient, use language that encourages their efforts. Scaffolding techniques and discussion groups are especially helpful because a teacher is like a gardener in a field. The whole field must be watered collectively before plants can sprout on their own. As a brief note to educators in British Columbia, Vygotsky's theories are in line with the BC core competencies. Since classrooms and group discussions are a way that Vygotsky identifies effective teaching, there is actually a subcategory under the BC communication competency that has to do with collaboration. One facet to this is that, quote, students combine their efforts with those of others to effectively accomplish learning and tasks, end quote. Here, when students learn collaboratively, they can also learn from one another's perspectives, and this leads us to the next point, which is about how Vygotsky's theories promote inclusivity. So according to Vygotsky, the way people think originates from their society and cultural origin. This includes the way people interact with each other. Hence, teachers should provide an inclusive learning environment that accepts diversity. One thing Vygotsky also emphasizes is that learning and emotions are interconnected. This is important to recognize because diverse students might feel inferior in the classroom. And so, for example, with standard-based learning, students are expected to align the way that they write with the way that textbooks express the English language. And this might pose a problem for students who come from other cultural backgrounds where English is not their first language. A teacher might misperceive that these students are doing poorly, but instead of lacking intelligence, they're trying to adapt to a culture that is not representative of their own. To be more inclusive, teachers and students should be empathetic to one another's emotions and to each other's ways of knowing. Teachers can use encouraging language to invite students to do the same for one another. When the teacher and students are empathetic towards one another, diverse students have more confidence in their schoolwork. And this confidence will then carry over in their ability to want to try harder and to see themselves in a more positive way. An inclusive classroom will be a safe place where students can learn new things from one another and learn from their perspectives. Moreover, Vygotsky would promote literature to incorporate cultural tools into an inclusive curriculum. Literature is an art form in which readers feel emotionally connected with character perspectives. Students can learn from these perspectives to deepen their understandings of the human experience. But if, for example, a bookshelf has all white characters, then diverse students are not going to feel like they can connect with these characters because their identity is not included. A diverse bookshelf, on the other hand, will enrich in student learning, and hence inclusive teachers will choose books and literature that is representative of multiple people groups and multiple ways of knowing. Vygotsky emphasizes cultural tools, and in British Columbia, one unique cultural tool that we have is the First Peoples Principles of Learning. This can be incorporated in curriculum plans along with the BC core competency to be inclusive to other cultural ways of knowing. Vygotsky's theories complement the principles, and I'm going to give two examples. So in one of the principles states that, quote, learning is embedded in memory, history, and story. So again, it emphasizes story, that literature and reading should be inclusive of all people groups. It also talks about history and memory. So this would be unique to the First Peoples' experiences and to what they value with memory. So you could even lead students in a discussion on what that means for their culture. There's another one I'm going to use as an example. And so, quote, this principle states that learning requires the exploration of one's identity, end quote. And this is something that is difficult to do in an environment that is not inclusive. So again, the First People's Principles of Knowing connects directly with Vygotsky's theories and promotes an inclusive classroom. So overall, classrooms should promote diversity, and what is said should encourage student growth. So that summarizes our presentation. So basically, when teachers understand cognitive theories, they support the student growth and potential and have a caring classroom environment that is representative of developmental stages and of diverse students.
So that's it, fellow educators. We hope you enjoyed watching and learned some important lessons from our presentation. We're sure that you will all become great educators. Dankeschön.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.